I'm going to jump into this lesson by establishing some plane breaks, just to hint at them. I want to start hinting at some plane breaks here, just like a little bit of a plane break. I did say I don't want this to be too grizzly, so I'm not going to go too far. And then establish the tibia, the dent of the tibia. I will come back and revisit this. Another thing I want to do is I'm going to move the knee to be higher. I feel like the thigh is too much longer than the shins. So I'm going to take the mask tool, or mask lasso, mask this, and then blur a few times, invert, and then use the move tool to move the knee up. So about that much. I think that should be enough. Not that much. Yeah, that looks good. Alright, then the next thing I'm going to jump into is the foot. I'm going to do her foot and then we'll jump over and go get his foot done. I'm going to use slightly different primitives to start their shapes. So for her, I'm going to use a sphere. Start with the sphere. Move the sphere just to the side. I'm going to be using it for a whole bunch of pieces of the foot, so I'm going to just keep it over there, and I will duplicate a copy and create the first piece of the foot, which is the heel. I'll scale this down, and this is going to be, I'm going to flatten the bottom. Get something like that. Move it into position. I'm going to use a cube for his stuff. I just want to start off with more crescent shapes for her and have to work out of them. Move that forward. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this again. Create the actual foot from it. Make sure that there's an arch here in the inside of the foot. A plane break. With her foot, I really want it to look human-like. Just be the digits that are what will distinguish it as a quadruped. I want it to look human-like because the sneakers I picked for her really depends on the human anatomy for its design. Shape. That. There's some arching piece, and then this piece. Smooth it out. This is where the toes are going to come in. They should turn on the floor, see what's happening. Okay. Now I'm going to use just the foot. I'm a very fairly thick ankle, so I will need to spread this a bit. Not too much. Definitely not this thick. I'm going to start establishing the malleolus with the sphere too, so I can keep track of it more easily. Malleolus are the joints of the, I'm going to hide the floor. I'll make the necessary sizing afterwards to make sure she's standing on the ground plane. Duplicate this, move it to the other side, and just want to make sure I know that this one is higher, this one is lower. Are in the wrong place right now. That one here. There's some shapes to remind me. We'll get to their design shortly. I should have used a different piece for this. There's like this flatter area of the foot. Oh, this is flatter. This side is more pronounced. To remind myself that this is blocking. And this part of the leg, you don't want to forget the arch that sits at the base of the foot. How about this arch? This looks like a good starting point. I definitely went too far with how wide I made this. I'll start making it. I usually use a cube for all of this. I was just experimenting with something this time around. Ultimately, you still have to shape them to look like what they're supposed to look like. So you do have to push things around, but it's good to start with a cube and smooth it out. Bulge at the tibia. Okay. So it's feeling like her feet are not wide enough. I'm gonna make them wide. Wider. And I'm gonna take the malleolus and scale it in because it's not a spherical shape. Scale that into. Shape this a little bit more. This is travels up. A nice offset curve in comparison to the inside one. It's longer curve. Use this to make sure I'm moving just this piece of geometry. Take a look at it. Alright, next thing I'm going to put in, I'm going to make this malleolus a little thinner and actually start moving it around to be closer to the shape of the malleolus. Okay. Alright, that's a good starting point. I move that a little bit down, not too down, not that much. And now I'm going to get the digits. I'm going to see if it's a good idea to keep her digits separate. I always do that because I imagine if I want to do foot animation, I want her to be able to have digits, individual digits, but sometimes I end up going with a flatter look. So I end up going with a one solid mass for the foot. I might not do that this time around because it will help with foot animation. I'll be able to move the digits around. So I'll keep it separate for as long as possible. And if I decide don't need them, then I'll jump into, I'll just weld it together. Create. I'm just gonna have 3 digits because usually wildcats just have 3 visible digits. But I'd like 3 threes, a little bit easier to manage. Looks cool. Duplicate this, move it. The last digit, that will be the pinky. Give it some room to breathe. I was gonna put the padding in now, but I think not. I think I might wait till I start fleshing this thing out to put the padding at the bottom. As I mentioned, the padding, the main padding at the bottom here is going to extend all across, not just on the ball, but it's going to come all the way down to the heel. I'm going to weld these pieces together, submerge them down. Just so I can activate symmetry, mirror, and weld and see what it looks like. It's interesting. This mass here. Now I'm going to use the move topological so I can move these individually. I want to hint at this just a little bit more aggressively, this mound of the foot. Just like that. Since we're just sort of blocking out, I want to start hinting at some of these things. Get rid of that artifact. Usually the trim dynamic does a good job of losing those artifacts. It doesn't really matter, but I don't like looking at it. Okay, so alright, that's her foot. That's the foot block out. Move this side a bit out. Get that pinky out of there too. So. Mirror and weld. And delete hidden. I don't need that sphere anymore. I ended up welding it into everything. Don't need it. Let me separate the malleolus from everything. So I'll isolate them and go split hidden because I think I might need to increase the size of this foot. Yeah, they're pretty big. Let's get them back down. Because the shoes have to come on top of that. Make them even look bigger. Might even go smaller than this. It won't even be that noticeable on the final. Almost negligible. It would have to look really hard to see these malleolus. So right now they're just helping me to, acting as a screen marker. So I remember I have to deal with them. Okay. All right. Okay, that's our foot blockout. To make sure the shape is correct. A little bit more. The adductors more out there. This outline is just a little bit. I'll come back to it later. So I hate all this faceting so much that I'm going to split hidden to isolate it. I'm just going to dynamesh this just to lose that. That might have been too much. There we go. That should be good. The more I look at her leg, I feel like I cannot chart a straight line from where the thigh joint is going to be all the way through to the center of her foot. That's important for the foot to be straight, or at least that's what I established, that I'm going to keep the feet straight, and it also makes for a more interesting pose. So I'm going to grab her legs, move them out of here, combine them with the malleolus, so I'll merge down, and then I'm going to append a cube, and that cube I'm going to go into perspective and scale up the cube. And put it at around where the hip joint is going to be. Yeah, so hip joint is probably going to be around there. So I'm going to turn on transparency. Yeah, hip joint is probably going to be here, travel through the leg. So I'm going to grab her feet, okay, and then I'm going to move the manipulator to this part of her leg and just rotate it a bit so we're just traveling down to the center of her foot. Then I'm going to hide the cube, go back into draw mode, hide transparency, hide the cube. Okay. And so now that looks like a more natural pose, and also I'm able to chart a straight line right through the leg. I'm going to be doing a lot of things like this. Looks like I have one more piece that should have been merged down. So I'll merge down the foot with the digits and the heel, and then move them into position. Okay, that feels more natural. And also I'm able to, it's a straight line to the pit of the foot, central part of the foot. Something I'm trying to experiment with over here. I'm going to put some plane breaks into this thing. Start hinting at some plane breaks. This is the first one I want to try. I'm going to go with a shape that's too grizzly. So this is also something I can start dealing with right now. But from this angle, this is not what's to be expected from the silhouette of the leg. Some more. Somewhat of a dip here. From the side view like this, we can have that nice swooping shape, but from this view, you don't want. When I weld the pieces, I'll have a better go at it. Just, it's a good thing to get initially. Feet definitely have to taper. I'm just imagining the Balenciaga sneaker on them, and I don't want any these stylized looking puffy forms it won't fit into the shoe correctly. And they are being modeled as if they are going to fit into a shoe. Okay, I'm going to move in to start blocking her fingers. I'm going to start over there too with a sphere. And this sphere is going to represent the thumb, the base of the thumb. Start there. Actually, before I do that, her fingers are going to be a lot sleeker than his. Yeah, I want that angle of the thumb's base, and have like this part, so it's this like angle that thumb emerges out of. Let me plug this in there. Actually, I'm just gonna move to the side and duplicate from it because I'm gonna need a handful of them. This. And start shaping it to look more like base of a thumb. Just to help establish direction, I'm going to use a cube for the next section of each finger. I'm also going to move that to the side because I'm going to need a few. I'll duplicate from it, scale it down. I want to establish a natural direction. I'm also going to have the fingers be curled naturally, and then I'll straighten them for rigging. That's one thing I will straighten at the end, just before I export this thing to rig it, because the natural fingers are a lot easier to digest visually. Those straight looking fingers look really weird. So if you have your thumb out like this, your thumb should be pointing, the front of your thumb should be pointing at your pinky. So that's why I'm going like this. I'm going to go to the deformation tab and run the smooth tool a little bit. Another thing about the fingers is that you do have like a flattened feel to them like this. I'm actually just going to duplicate this and use it as the first finger, what would be her forefinger. First one. Shelf-like feel for the knuckle to represent the knuckle, but I do want her fingers to be long and sleek. So I would do want to make sure I maintain that flatness of the finger. Might have gone too small. Do want something like that. And as I said, I would straighten it to be traveling down the chain when it's time to rig it, or not. The fingers aren't that difficult to rig. There's nothing special that has to happen on the fingers that will be difficult because they're not straight. So I might leave them in that natural pose, but we'll see. So I'm going to duplicate this, move it, and I did say that I'm going to maintain some of that puffiness of an anther character, but I do want a sleekness to it. So I'm going to make sure that hers feels like that, feels longer, sleeker. I'm not going to get too far ahead of myself. This is just a block out, so I don't go too crazy. And she will have nails, but I won't worry about the nails right now. She'll have really long nails. I'm not going to focus on it now. And I'll deal with it after we've sort of gotten the hand looking the way it's supposed to look like, and we can get the nail bed in there. And duplicate this to Get one for the thumb. Not this. Make sure it's pointing in the right direction. See how big it's looking. It's not too bad. I'm going to merge these two shapes, take them down, so I can more easily just merge them together, and then duplicate, move them down to get the other fingers. Again, this is just the block out. I'm going to try to maintain the feeling of the middle finger being longer and the pinky being smaller. And also, there's this radiating pattern. I want to get that too, just a little bit. Okay, so I'm going to take this and just start off with somewhat of a natural hand pose, like a natural curled hand pose. I feel like it's more fun to look at. And I'll duplicate this and get the pinky from that. Should be a little smaller. I'm starting to see now. This thing might be a little too fat. Then get the pinky to rotate just a little bit in. There is like a shelving effect, like a stepped effect when it comes to the fingers. When you look at it from profile, it should sort of like taper down like this. So I'll do kind of simulate that a bit. Really, this little mount, I don't think I'm going to use a sphere. I'll just pull it out. I just like to keep track of these forms that I'm going to be messing with a lot. I might just leave it as it is, just make sure I differentiate that this is like, there's a plane break here and there's a mount in this internal part. So that is the finger blockout. Activate symmetry, mirror and weld. Nope, looks like I have the wrong direction for mirror and weld. It's mirroring the other side over. So I could, I think, turn off symmetry, lose that side by going delete hidden, and then activate symmetry, mirror and weld, and you should get it there. Delete hidden is in, I think, geometry tab, modify topology, and delete hidden is right there. So now I'm going to scale this down because the hands look really huge. I have to turn on local symmetry, yeah. Turn on local symmetry so it scales it in local space. I think those are pretty good size hands. Group visible. And then mask just that part so I can rotate it a little forward. Get a more natural feel. I'm pulling up some anatomy sheets and we'll be doing a lot of going back and forth between the anatomy sheets to make sure we're getting the anatomically correct result. Or something close to it. This is not really real. I want to let the anatomically correct result guide us as much as possible. Okay, I think this is good. Okay, I'm going to move on to him and get his feet and his digits done. So with him, I'm going to go with more cuboid shapes. So I'll start by appending a cube move it to location. This is going to be the back of his heel. And I'm going to go to the deformation tab and smooth this out a bit. Not that much. And I'm just going to duplicate it. I'm going to take a different approach with him so you can see another way to assemble a foot. You could also do a feminine foot like this with this more mannequinized approach. All right. This will be sort of like a representation of that tendinous area. Quite frankly, I'm going to split this into two. I'm going to duplicate this, scale this down, and let this be the more this would be more so the bottom of the foot. This would be the part almost right. There's this barreling part right under the tendon. I can't believe I forgot the name of that. It's called the Achilles tendon. Yeah, so I'm just going to shave it a little bit. Just hinting at it. Really. It's going to be a lot thinner than this, but just a little something. And then I'm going to duplicate this. Let it form the actual foot. And I'm going to duplicate it again. Let this be the mound, central mound that sits and travels up towards the ankle. You can lasso it and rotate it. And move it back. Okay. This is the beginnings of a foot. Start moving these shapes. This is a little too thick. It's really supposed to be all the way down here. And I can start shaving away at this piece. Gonna be that mound. And let me start establishing these plane breaks. Angles where the toe is going to come in. This region here is the inside. Okay. Something that looks somewhat like a foot. Start shaping this in preparation. Thing that I was supposed to also do with him, same deal, establish these better plane breaks. I did want a more exaggerated bull-legged feel. I think I expressed it in the concept. Typically there's going to be something, it's going to be expressed like something like that, and just hint at it. to help my eye deal with this stuff better. I'm going to append another cube to get the digits. Go to deformation, actually divide first, and go a little bit of a smoothing, delete lower. So you need like a toe fitting inside a shoe. Let me duplicate that. Duplicate it one more time to form this last piece, sort of like a pinky. Make sure that this part is accommodating the foot. It's really messy. I'm going to dynamesh it, perhaps even lower. Okay, something like that should get us started. And just shave. Trim dynamic. Look at the initial shape I'm looking for. And also push back this to emphasize that mound. I think I brought it out too far. This might also be a little too high. Also with him, I care about how well it's going to fit into the sneaker, so it's going to adopt a more human-like shape. Foot. I think that should be enough for now. I'm gonna put something just like I did with her. I'm going to put two spheres to represent the malleolus. Move it down. Thin it out. Scale it in. Put it over there, scale it down. It's more of a diamond shape from all views. Even from the front it has like a more of a diamond shape like that. It will not be this emphasized as we sculpt. It'll become less emphasized, but for now I want it to look big. I just keep track of it, just like with her. I'm going to mirror and weld. Symmetry now. Okay, so all of this will make sense soon. That's good. Smooth these just a little. And also shave just a little. A little bit too mannequinized. Start hinting at the direction we're going to be heading in. I think sometimes I'm overshooting the offset between the lateral and medial malleolus. It's not that much of an offset. There is one, but I think with her too I might need to go correct that. Feet are fairly small. Let me merge his feet down. So I can scale it up. Turn off Dynamesh. I want to end up Dynameshing by mistake. And it's time to turn on the floor to make sure I've not made him over 6 feet, which probably is the case. Yep, I made him really tall. Okay. So I'm going to move it up. Yeah, it looks like his knees are also going to have to be moved up like the way I did it for her. Oh, looks like I left the malleolus down there. Merge down. Move them up. That's in the wrong position. Turn symmetry off. Actually, that's interesting. Okay, so yeah, his legs feel a lot thicker. Should be. I'm going to merge his legs together, so I can apply the same fix I did for her. So I'm going to grab his thighs, merge down with his knees, there. And then grab the lasso mask, invert, blur, mask. Blur mask is under the masking submenu. And just take the move tool and move his knees up a bit. Okay, looks about right. And now I'll have to do a whole bunch of adjusting this. Let me hint at these quads in the front here to come out a bit more. Okay, I think that's a good starting point for his legs. I'm going to activate symmetry. Why? Oh, because I have local symmetry on, that's why I was doing that. Alright, turn local symmetry off and mirror and weld. Yeesh, sorry, wrong icon clicked. Mirror and weld. And that should be the beginnings of his feet. I can do the same with the malleolus. Okay, so that looks pretty good for him. Good starting point. His feet look a bit weird. He's not going to be as ham-limbed, so I want to make sure I get some nice, lean, sleeker feet in there. coming from. Just smooth it out. It's really not that important to be focusing on minor details like that now. I'm gonna move this down a bit. Okay. Alright, so that's the beginnings of his feet. Thanks. Start hinting at the knee. The knee is gonna be. Okay, looks good. Now let's move on to his fingers. I'm also going to start the fingers with a sphere. The thumb, to be more specifically, the base of the thumb is going to be a sphere. With him, I might leave this shelf. I won't well, actually I should. I'll exaggerate this angle a bit too, so it doesn't look too cartoonish. Not as sharp as her angle, but some bit of an angle. For his fingers, I'm gonna go with also another approach. Well, somewhat similar, but it's gonna be all cubes. And I'll just create one and duplicate it for all the rest. It's another way that really works too. Let me create the division over there. And that radial feel. And I'll append a cube. Move it into position, scale it down, flatten it, go like that. It's going to be more flat than anything. Finger is really a rectangular, like cuboid when you mannequinize it. Inject that in there and go to deformation, smooth it out, and then I'm going to, in this instance, duplicate it and move it to create the next section. So these guys only have 2 sections for the fingers. It allows me to spend more time fine-tuning the animation of each finger, because I only have 3 fingers and 2 sections. So the finger animation, the polishing of the finger animation is a lot better for the type of things I'm working on. Alright, let me move this up to represent a little bit more of, and I'm going to smooth this a little bit to get like, but still want that puffy feel specifically for him. I could have used a sphere too, but and actually the outskirts are not so. Her nails are going to feel more human-like. His is going to feel like something you'd expect to see on an anthro character. Maybe more. I'll hint at what I'm going to do with his nail here. Yeah, this is a lot more puffy. this needs to be larger. There we go. Fairly bigger. That's good. Okay, I'm going to add a sphere to show you what I'm going to attempt with his nail later. It will just be a little stand-in. If it's not looking that good, I might change the idea. I'm going to experiment with these hands a little bit, or at least with the nail. Really just, nope, just use the regular move. Just that simple nail feel that you see on quadrupeds. I might not, I might just go with the regular nail, but I'm just going to put it in there and see what it's feeling like. And then if it feels good for as I detail the hand, and I'll go with that. So this finger, I'm going to merge it down and then just duplicate it to create the rest. Move down. This one I said is going to be taller. Not fatter, but taller. So make sure I don't, there we go. Taller in this sense, and taller for the second section. Okay, so it represents like a middle finger. And then I duplicate this again, and it's gonna be like the pinky, which should just be smaller generally. Let me offset this properly. And the other offset I want to make sure I have is the hands have like I said for her, you have like a stepping down as you head towards the pinky, not that aggressive. So. Okay, this one must have been a little bit too aggressive. Alright, and then to get a more natural pose, I'm going to pose all of them a little bit of a curl. Okay, that feels pretty good. Fingers are kind of fat, which is cool. To do some good weight painting to get them to not transfer weights back and forth. Okay, I'm going to duplicate this and move it to create the thumb digit. It's not smaller, it's just shorter. I'm gonna mask this. Move it. Make a more thumb-like feel. This digit is also a bit too much. Another thing I forgot to do on her was taper this out a lot more. But when we get back to her, I'll deal with that. It's a little bit more of a tapering. Okay, I lost a little bit of that natural feel. With the thumb, I'm fine with having to route a not so straight joint system, just so I can get like a natural, it can be in a very natural pose at default. And it looks like this could be rotated up a bit to taper into the arm a lot better. And then I think all I have to deal with is this, express this this sort of indent inset here, closer to the fingers, and this lump here. And that should be a good starting point for his hand. Pretty big. So I'm gonna do the same thing, mask out the other side. Oh, it looks like I combined it with the hand. All right, let me get the hand out of my split hidden. So we separate two, and I can turn off symmetry, hide one side, delete hidden, and then get this palm with shift down to the bottom so I can merge it with all these fingers. So I'm going to go merge down, merge down, merge down. And I think I also have the base of the thumb to do. Merge down and activate symmetry, mirror and weld. That's weird. I might have left something on the other side. Mask or something? Let me try again. There we go. Looks like some kind of mask. Okay, so those hands are pretty big. I'm gonna scale them down. I'll turn on local symmetry so I can scale them down in their local space. And I think that's good. I'm gonna one more time test how far his hands are when we rotate from the femur. Yeah, this is absolutely huge. Hands are very huge, so definitely have to come down. Scale his hand down. Again, let me merge this down. Try again with smaller hands. Yeah, that's a little bit more reasonable. Yeah, that's about a reasonable place. And I'll have many more opportunities to change it further down the line. I realized that the nails are not sitting at the center of the nail bed, so I'm going to fix them real quick. I'll control click on them, on each of them, and center. No, I'm going to have to first auto group to give every single piece its own group, and then mirror and weld again to make sure that that auto group goes to the other side and that all the changes can propagate to the other side. So if I control click on the nail now, I can move it into the center and do it for all of them. Move it to the center, control click, center, move it to the center. And this one, a little bit more difficult. But I can align the cursor to a flat planar surface by holding down control and dragging, and there. And that should have fixed the other side too. Yeah, that's good. I'm going to run that same test I run with her to make sure that I can draw a straight line from the thigh joint all the way to the center part of the ankle. Somewhere here, just duplicate it and move it down so he gets his own. And turn on transparency and turn off perspective. And yes, that's around where the hip joint is going to be. So this one is fine. So this one I could travel down straight to the pit of the foot, so he's fine in that department. And the other place I'm going to run a check like that is what I spent a lot of time talking about in the last lesson, about being able to chart a straight line from around the sacrum to the center of his neck. So, and hers too. So I'm going to duplicate and move this up And yes, I should be able to, so a spine joint can go straight up like that. This one is actually really perfect. So about there, it's really good. All right, and then let me do the same for her. Let me get his stuff in here. Duplicate. See if I can chart a straight line. Yes, hers is a little, it's still fine. It's not that bad. I have angled her back quite a bit, but I like that gesture. So I might sculpt like this, and then right before we take her out, I might just straighten her just a little bit, because I like this gesture. It's gonna help me to really feel what she's gonna look like. So that's something to keep in mind. I'm gonna keep this over here, and when we're done with her, it might end up being something like, or maybe right before I do the clothes, it would be sort of rotate the lumbar like that, and then get a little bit, so this would move, rotate forward, and this would rotate like this, right, just so I can get that line. So yeah, hers is something to keep track of. I'll hide that for now. Now I'm gonna move to adding their tails. So let me get hers in. I'm just gonna append a cylinder and move it and smooth, do a deformation smooth. I want that to be the base. And then divide that. No. Do a divide. And try this again. This time with a blur. And then do some smoothing. Some more smoothing of what I believe is going to be. Oh, there we go. And I'm going to do a little bit of a scaling to activate symmetry. Go to transform, turn on radial symmetry. And I'm looking for y-axis. And I'm going to just pull this out just a little bit. Okay. And then I'm going to invert that and scale upward. Now the kind of tail I'm going for, the shape of the tail, I'm going to make it really close to the reference, but obviously as you proceed, it's going to be groomed and it's going to look more like a snow leopard's tail. I'm going to show on the screen what a snow leopard's tail is going to look like, so the groom is going to take us towards that shape. But for now, I just want this like cylindrical feel to it, because that's what I kind of did in my reference. It's a fairly big tail. Divide. Okay, I'm going to rotate it into position. Turn like that. So it's a pretty large tail, just to tell you. It's going to really sit right there. It's a pretty big tail. Let it taper a little bit, to let it blend into the back a little bit better. Really, it should be emanating out of what would be the coccyx. So I think just right out of the sacrum. It's like another section of the spine, the fourth section of the spine. Yeah, something like that. It's gonna be that big, and usually I rig the tail to be scalable, so I'll have the opportunity to make it whichever size I want. Let me dynamesh this at a, there we go. So that's a nice little low res. I still feel like it is fairly small, like a tapered feel to it. I'm gonna select it. Yeah. Blur. Actually, let me select right down the center and blur as much as possible. Get a nice gradation. And then scale it from there to get that tapered feel. Yeah, like that. Feels about, that's a really big tail, but we'll be fine. You can always scale it up and down. Alright, so if that's going to be her tail, I'm going to duplicate it and just do a posed version. I'll move forward. I'll occasionally turn it on to see. The tail is going to be mostly hidden, this one and the posed one, and occasionally I'll turn it on to see how it's working with everything. So I'm going to give it a nice little S shape. I'm going to invert that, blur, and rotate like that much. And I can like diameshing it. I don't want that. Not too longer either. From here, I'm going to manipulate it physically. I'm going to manipulate it with the brush to get it as close as possible to these big, broad movements. Let me see if I'm going to benefit from having it like that. Okay, yeah, that does look good. Some big broad movements. I just want a nice gesture. And the control system, I'm going to use a ribbon system to create this, so I'm going to be able to inflate everything along the chain to get some nice shapes. Okay, I think that's a good little pose tail. Shape is not as attractive. Make this have more volume. Should extend to this too. It will be the groom's responsibility to give us this silhouette or even a better one. Don't want it to look too much like this. Looks a little bit more like a squirrel's tail. So I just want to find a way to represent volume in an interesting way, but yeah, we'll be counting on the groom to shape the tail. Give us some good feathering. Okay, so that's hers. His tail is a lot simpler. Well, for a simple rabbit like tail or hair, and that's just, you get a sphere. Move it down. Before I, no, let me turn off symmetry, get to the center first. And then I have to activate symmetry, mirror and weld. So make sure we have something that is, this is just like a simple rabbit-like tail. What I remember the rabbit tail to look like. Simplify this mesh. There we go. Probably establish some good plane breaks in the profile will help. Okay. And that's a good starting point for him too. Yeah, I'm gonna bring it out so that I can get the crescent shapes that showed emanating from the sacrum region. Alright, so that's his for now. So the next order of business is the blocking out of the head. Appendisphere. I'm gonna refrain from sculpting and just assemble pieces because that was what this stage was for. Limiting myself to certain brushes and also doing things like this with primitive, so it stops you from jumping too far ahead of yourself. I'm going to duplicate this and I'm going to create what would be his cheeks. It's going to be a little bit forward. I'm going to hide this now, it's not needed. Just going to hint at a few things. You know that activate symmetry, mirror weld. Know that his eye mass will be somewhere around there. Also know that his forehead would be like maybe somewhere there. This is the entire eye socket region. And I know I'm using this somewhat triangular like shape. Just hint at some of this stuff. This would be the eye socket region. Can just have a little bit, create somewhat of a temple-like region, and that should be about activate symmetry, mirror and weld, and so we get his beginnings of his snout. Yeah, it's a little turtly, so I'll have to get rid of that, but it'll come together soon. Let me merge down and move this up. Move it up. Alright. So I'm going to add another, append another sphere. Use that to create his snout. Let me duplicate that and move it up. Come back here. This would be the mass that represents his entire sort of snout. Go like this a bit, shorten. Okay. Looks like this might be a little, this chin area is a little bit overemphasized. duplicate this. Stop myself from sculpting and just focus on mannequinizing. That's really what this stage is. It's like a mannequinization phase. So nothing is connected. You wouldn't dare attempt to sculpt. No, that's wrong. Let me turn off local symmetry. That's wrong too. Looks like there's more of it on the other side than I thought. So now I should be able to mirror in well. No, there's a lot more of it. Turn off symmetry. Okay, so I'm just trying to hint at what would be the snout. This is something I'm interested in fleshing out really well at this stage. Not detailing, just to see how the primary shapes are going to function together. More so to see also the proportions. I feel like I want to make sure the proportions are working based on my reference. Let me get the nose region in there. Something like that. And turn off perspective. A little shelf that would just hint at what the nose looks like. That. This side view. Might need that. It looks really rough right now. Little okay. I think I'm missing is that these three pieces need to come lower. I'm gonna move them down to about there. I suppose that their shapes needs a little bit more of structure, a little bit more mannequinization. And this is supposed to blend into the face a lot better. Or it needs to be very jaw-like. I'm looking for some nice profile shapes. In my reference, I have it swinging like a human jaw. I'm just doing a little bit of experimentation to see if that's the best option. His snout is a little too big. Just hinting at the fur. Actually, no, I'll do that with a separate piece of geometry. I'm going to keep this a good underlying shape. Just pushing to see to see if I'll find some lines that will make me rest easy. Just hint at what I'm expecting. There's going to be an almond shape in here. The head shape is horrendous. And if I should go with a slope like this, I have to have there is like start pulling this out a bit. To actually simulate a real shape. There we go. That's gonna be there. Okay. I'm going to now try to get our ears. So I'm gonna start blocking out the ears. Let me scale up. Maybe. And let me scale. Yes. Do a little dynamesh. End up with a simpler mesh. Some quick blockout. Get these tips. Try to get like a nice offset from this view. Better design. So a peak is here and a peak is over there. And yeah, this is a starting point. Let me see if I like the way it's coming out of the head. I feel like the head needs to be more mannequinized. Now I see things that I could do. More cuboid like. Yeah, sometimes you can draw something in 3D. You obviously have a lot more to resolve. It's easier to draw it in the front profile, but you gotta make sure you play around and make sure it looks good in every conceivable angle, like very good. Widen the nose there. Profile. Do that. The underlying mass. I'm getting there. I feel like I need some fake fur. And another thing I might be having should be also trying to define is how the neck blends into it. That might have a reason to do it, why it's looking a little weird. I need to grab my mask pen, mask this, control click, blur, solo, and then I'm going to scale this up. Activate symmetry, mirror meld. Make sure it goes into the head properly. something that makes me feel like I might want to go with, I do have to design how this flows. Just hint at some of the flowing patterns. Let me see what's gonna work. See if this can somewhat simulate a swing of the jaw. From the profile. Let's see how I'm going to be tackling I need a rotation of a handful of elements. I'm going to take this. Yeah. I'm going to merge this mass. First I'm going to auto group this. I'm going to isolate this mass. Go split hidden. I'm going to come down here, merge down with the snout and duplicate it just to keep the original. And then grab everything for the jaw. There, go blur, rotate, and rotate it down. Okay, there we go. Something more closer to what I'm looking for. There we go. That was the problem. I was just seeing something really weird. I'm going to duplicate this too, so I have the copy of the original and compare them later on. And I'm going to move this down. Okay, that's starting to look a lot better. So it was a proportion thing. His face is looking really weird. Shapes are starting to look a lot better. Nice overlapping shapes. And with him, I think these ears, I think if I want this base to be a lot more grounded, I like that shape, but it feels very Bugs Bunny-ish, which is cool, but I really like that strong base. I don't want just like a thin piece emanating into and radiating outwards. I want a thick part of the base. As far as design is concerned, this needs to work. So I'm going to, with this, I'll stop here, because this is a initial blockout, and there's a lot more work to be done. Make sure that this ear here is looking clean enough. Okay, so it's very weird right now, but it'll get better as we start to flesh out the main thing. Different parts start to come in. And look at what the silhouette looks like. Very rabbit-like. His cheeks are fairly big. Yeah, very rabbit-like. So as far as like that rabbit look, it's pretty good. shelving. Straight chin, maybe. Might not be it, but I think it's pretty cool. Yeah, the silhouette appears to be working. I added a stroke here underneath the eye. I had stopped the recorder, but I added a stroke underneath here. And I also emphasized this angle of the top snout. Smooth this a little. When I'm done fleshing out the head, well, not done, halfway through fleshing out the head, I might, or actually I will, take this into Maya and do a test run with the fur just to see if I need to make any changes to the shape or how things are connecting. Yeah, I think this torso might be a little too long. I'm going to go into the transpose tool, Z plugin, transpose master, T-pose mesh. Then I'm going to turn off perspective, grab this region here, all the way up to the ears from here, blur it a few times, and just move this down to shorten that Greek arch. It's just too tall. That's about good. So plug in, T-pose subtract. Okay. Yeah, I really like it from the top. It looks really cool from the top. We have to work it from the front and the side. But I really think ultimately when this snout is connected and it's sculpted to blend, have the nice smoothness there, I think it's gonna look all right. Just have to make all these pieces work well together. I have this really gaunt result for the cheeks, and I want to try something a little rounder, something closer, almost reference at the outskirts. Let's see if it has any value. Smooth that out. Make sure from a shape perspective I have something that's sound. Okay. There's still remnants of the backside showing from the front. I want to lose that. Might end up bringing the chin lower. Yeah, I think this might be better than that really sharp, gaunt result from before. Definitely closer to the reference. Plus, with all the, these are the two I have to pick from. I think I like this, but when the time comes, I'll have to settle on one of them. I'll just call one gaunt and the other one fluffier or sharper. It's getting better. Started off looking really weird. And I'll be checking the back and the side to make sure they're all selling. I'll find the proper shapes that I need. Might need to have a dip here. Let's see. Okay, I think, yep, that's a good starting point for him. Let's move to her and get her head done too. I'm going to take somewhat of a similar approach for her with some minor differences in approach. Start by duplicating this sphere that we imported from Maya for her height. I'm going to see what Dynamesh offers. That's a bit much. That's still a lot. holding down control to and dragging in the viewport to resample Dynamesh. That's what I've been doing. I realized I didn't mention that. So I'm trying to start with what I'm seeing in their reference and then accommodate what's not working in 3D. I know that she is gonna have her snout and very have that temple-like feel for her. She also has like a swing in there. It's a very interesting gesture for that bottom half. Start hinting at that snout. I'll bring a different piece in to get it though. Make sure her jaw swings down like that. Yeah, she might be faster trying to get her than him. With the feminine characters, you're looking for a really smooth crescent shape, so you don't want to do too much hacking away at what you have. So even if that does happen and I end up with a whole bunch of grizzly shapes, I'll be averaging and smoothing till I get like nice crescent transitions. Let me append a sphere to deal with her nose the same way I dealt with his. Where's the sphere? There it is. Scale it down. Move it forward. For now, move it up. Symmetry, Marin Weld. Looking for move this back a bit. Nose. He had mentioned in around lesson 1 that shooting for that shelf-like look for the transition from the nose to the, I guess, bridge of the nose of the forehead. So I'm gonna start emphasizing that. Go to the profile, you'll see. And then this shelf. Okay. And then I'm going to add, that might be way too high, I feel. That's one thing I continually did. Contain her features to the center part of her head and then also keep them really low. I think it's a lot of the reference that I have. That's my main reference, and then a lot of the reference of anthers that I saw. I like that look. Usually when you're modeling characters and you're looking weird like that, so you always have to remember that a lot of times the forehead there's a lot of room for forehead, and I think I remember learning a long time ago that when it comes to female characters, it's always good. They look more attractive when you give them bigger foreheads. So that's something that's always carried with me. But if whether you're drawing or doing 3D, when you see a character looking weird, it's more often than not have something to do, like sometimes when you start the head and it's looking a little amateurish, it's because you haven't given enough room for the forehead, and it's looking really, really weird. So that's the first place to start, making room. Yeah, we're back to that issue, it being too close. There we go. And then have to move it together. If that's even gonna work. And with her, I'll pronounce. Make sure this blends in. That's a huge nose. Shade this to emphasize how it is going to blend into the surrounding area a lot more. Okay. I'm going to hint at her, the bridge of her nose. This is where I'm really going to be able to find what's happening with that forehead. Okay, see, yet again, like with him, this thing is way too high. Merge it down and move it right there. And therefore, find that bridge again. From this like area. This is just hinting at it. Okay, make sure that this blends correctly. The snow leopards have this really like flat cranium, more box-like, but I want to make sure that's actually what I want. And the ears of snow leopard, there's a little split here, and I'm contemplating whether or not I should do the split. It's like a fold in the ear. I might do it, but I'm wondering whether I should go with sharp or really rounded like this. Emphasize the roundness, but still go with that split here. Like this dual this leaf-like effect where there's a little gap in there. I'm trying to remember what it used to be called. I'll figure it out. I'm gonna go with some realistic humanoid eyes. No more of that big, these big cartoony eyes. You know. feel like I've had enough of them over the years, so with these characters I'm gonna go with a lot more of a realistic look. Emphasize her forehead. I probably learned that from Sycra or Reiq. One of them mentions about that big forehead. I think it's Sycra. There's this artist called Sycra on YouTube. Check him out, and he has this lesson where he talks about how big foreheads make female characters look more attractive. So I might not be going with that short forehead of a real snow leopard. This appears to be a good starting point for her. I'm gonna look at the head and profile. Gesture, nose, minus this, blur, mask. Move it up just a little bit. Jaw. And thinner too. Alright, so this will be finessed a lot. And I'm gonna put in her a quick block out of her dreads. I'm gonna start with the cylinder. It's gonna hold it all together. Scale down. This might impact the way her ears. With a little bit of an angle like this. I'm going to pen the sphere for the base. Decided yet how I'm going to shape it, where it's emanating from all over the head. I might go with something close to realistic. That way I might have to shape the whole back of this head to feel a lot more humanoid-like. too much, just get something in. It can be. And I think just like him, I might attempt a neck that is closer to his too, that tapers upward. So I'm going to solo, mask, blur, and scale up. It's going to be groomed with fur, but it's a nice transition into the head. And I might give her like the human-like, so have the cranial mass feel a lot more human-like. And that way this hair can echo what is supposed to be like the cranial mass. More plain breaks basically. It's gonna look a little weird because her ears are where the snow leopard's ears are supposed to be, but the back of her head is shaped more human-like. So there'll be a lot of experimenting to see how these dreads work. I feel like here, move it a lot further back. So, this one will definitely have to be reconstructed from scratch. I just want to see how it's impacting the silhouette at this stage. For a little bit more of a tapering of this backside to echo that shape. Definitely have to tone down the size of the ears to accommodate the dreads. At the time I wanted the ears to be really big. I wasn't thinking about how the dreads were going to come in. But if you remember, I put the dreads in after doing the pose sketches and I ended up altering her ear. Now I'm going to continue hinting at this sort of like butterfly-like look that you get in a real snow leopard. Definitely might be going with that. Go back to my initially started with in my reference. There's a lot more plain breaks. There was a nice little plain break here. I think that's interesting look. Also a little bit of a rotation so we can see the top. The back I think is also important. I might forget about this leaf. I think it's an additional bit of detail that might not aid the design. I might go with these plain break. Yeah, it's much of a simpler shape. We'll come back to it. This ear is nowhere near. Can't really finalize the shape. I want to see how it works in conjunction with whatever is on top of the braids. Sorry, the dreads. And I think add one more. Better simulate what that is. Okay, so now I'm going to put in those dreads. There used to be a really cool tool called the, well, it's still here. It's the curved tubes. Use it to get one in. Let's see if it's gonna misbehave. Let's reduce the size of the brush and click on it. No, doesn't work. Okay, I'll just take what I have. Okay, it does work. Okay. Just wanted to get rid of that curve so I can have something basic to play with. Just mold it. Do just a little bit of inflation to make sure I have something that's thick enough. I'm gonna alt drag to create another copy. Several others. So I have some stuff to start with. Using the move topological so I can isolate movement to each one. To auto group to give them their unique polygroups. Do this again. This time I'm looking more for shapes that I can almost push like that. As a collective, you might want to be higher. Auto group again. Pick this. Nope. Auto group. There we go. So everybody has a unique group, and then control drag to yeah, that looks fine. One of them is going to have one or a handful of them is going to have like a either an ornament or like a tie wrapped around it. It just breaks up the design, makes it looks really cool. I kind of showcased it in the concept, but that's not something I'm gonna worry about now. For now, I just want just them out there to see how they impact the silhouette. Not too many. There's probably a count where I'm really gonna have to stop, or else it's gonna look really crazy. Don't look too nice. It'll look too crowded. Sure that from every single view is an interest. They're interesting shapes, interesting silhouettes, and they are not really overlapping themselves like this. This is not that good. This, I think I mentioned that there's going to be two different versions. One rig is going to be controlled primarily by end hair or end cloth, so it's going to be simulated. And then I'm going to have another rig that allows me to do manual animation for it. So I'll be switching back and forth between the two depending on what I want. Simulation is good, but simulation always doesn't give you what you want. It's nice to have an option. Yeah, I said something about doing the same for the drawstrings on the pants too. They'll have two rigs. Simulation rig and something for hand key animation. Okay, so this is a lot more interesting than when I started. This shape, I want to complete that arch. The shape, these don't look complete, so they're swinging. You need to swing and show weight, gravity. I'm not quite sure if I want. Yeah, now I see the constant clashing with the ears. I don't want that. End up with these tangents all the time every time you get there in frame. So the ear should never get in their way. We'll see how that works out. I also think I need one more in the center, but I'm going to see if it's going to work. So in the front, so I'm going to go auto group again, and I'm going to pull what should be the last one for now. See if it's going to help the silhouette in the profile whilst making the front look also interesting, or if it's just going to be an issue. It's not going to be an issue. It looks okay. I hope I don't need any more. I think I do need one more, but one more emanating almost straight out. Acting shots, this like the focal point. Well, you don't want this to distract too much from the focal point, but it still needs to, she still needs to look interesting from the front. And I like the fact that they're radiating out and down, because they won't take the eye off the screen, especially like if you have a shot of her face and one of them is pointing straight up into the air. It just takes the eye off the screen. So I might not put that one in there and just stick with this, but it definitely has to have a very attractive shape from the front view. I'm going to go to the silhouette and see what I'm getting. All these shapes, they're all looking somewhat interesting. I don't want to ruin the silhouette there, and I want a little bit more of an interesting forceful line there. Nice swooping, varied peaks to create nice negative space. Like here, the negative space is weird. It's not at all, actually. So that's not bad. The top still feels a little naked. This feels like, these things are, it's pretty kinky hair when you have dreads. So they are upright. Okay. So the silhouette is not failing. You have many more times to adjust it. And this doesn't feel like it's pointing correctly. You still have to feel like sound cylinders. ultimately you're able to pose it whichever way it needs to be posed so that you have good silhouettes. But at least the starting one should look cool, because you're going to be looking at it for a long time before you get to start moving things around. So this is a good start. Keep changing it if it needs change. One thing I probably made a mistake with was taking it too high. It's a little too high. And I should really take this out of here. Split hidden. This was really supposed to be simulating a tie, like a hair tie. So I'm going to make it have more of that look. Crunch down, divide, and smooth it a bit. Okay, now I'm going to just hint at the ones that are emanating out of her scalp. I definitely want later to, it'll be their individual pieces. Channel symmetry. And I had a discussion about how they would, how I was going to blend it. I'm going to either count on ZBrush exclusively to give them their frizz, or actually I talked about how I was going to blend them with the XGen system. There's going to be a lot of like flyaways just to blend the transitions, and this is probably going to be the most difficult part of this character to make look good. But right now I'm not even going to attempt to come up with like a final shape. I'm just gonna, this might completely change. You'll have just these simple blockout, and later as the work things become more clear. About what you should do. These for sure will be individual pieces though. I'm not, if they do is a singular piece, that means I'm going to need a displacement map. So I'd really like to split them up. Using the Damien standard to cut the recessions in. That's a bit, yeah, I gotta figure out all this, how it's gonna look here, what shapes to go with. And the shapes to go with around these ears will be figured out here. It will impact the way the head shape is going to be. So this is just a good start. Alright, so yeah, one thing I'm noticing about the hair is I'm realizing that I really will want it to be, let me confirm that. I was going to make them a lot thicker, but I think I'm going to get the inflate brushes and inflate brush and ZBrush. I'm going to do some treatment to certain areas just to make them thick. It'll help break them up so they all don't look the same. That's definitely something have to be done. This one looks weird from this angle. This one too. When they swing and produce a nice C shape, they look a lot, it looks better for design than these like uninteresting or not so cool designs. I also think these things typically look better when the tip is probably more thicker, yeah, than the base, right? So That's another thing to take into consideration. Fattening the tip produces more fun design. This lesson is going to be 2 hours. I saw it happening, and I have no choice. I want to be able to finish the blocking in this lesson so that in the next lesson we're just combining everything and starting the sculpting of the anatomy and moving towards completing the body. So sorry that it's 2 hours. The last thing I'm going to do is mannequinize their hands a little bit better, and that will be the end of the lesson. I have to make sure the hands are showcasing the ridge group and some other important parts that should be showcased on the arm. Okay, so this is like the starting dread, simple starting dread. Hopefully you don't have to add more. Maybe I do. Doesn't matter if it has to happen, it will happen. Maybe that central one is important. It might be. Let me auto group. This didn't. Good to do all these manually and just make sure you randomize the feel of each one. This error of handle ensure that you can't do the same thing, and that's good because it makes it look really feel real. This one looks a little weird. Shape. Okay, I think that's it, right? Part of me is tempted to put one more in here. Let me see what it looks like. It doesn't work. Then just let it go. Makes it look healthy, look like a nice healthy head of hair. Was looking a little emaciated with one thing I'm not even changing is the height. These really do have to be a little longer than others. Okay, yeah, that actually does look pretty good. So yeah, it's interesting. Original concept. So I think this is the starting point for her. This nose. Bridge. I do like the flat face for her too, but I'll have to define all of this. One thing for both of them that I might push is these quadrupeds. There's a line that splits through their forehead. It might be worth emphasizing than making it look like a human forehead. So that's something that I'll consider, not now, but as we go on. We'll see if it adds value. I seem to be trying to force like this human-like cranium because I really like human head, how it looks, how it tapers from the nape of the neck over here. And I'm wondering if I'll benefit from having that shape or nice, because it's like an S shape. Nice little S shape. And I'm sure when it's done well, it'll look good. You just have to try to capture that rather than this round bobblehead-like look. Yeah. I might experiment with something. Let's see. What type of detail I'm gonna have to shoot for these cheeks, whether we want fluffy. Yeah. I think 2D is just easy to just sort of pick like the handful of angles and decide how it's going to look like. Here you have to define everything, so you really have to revisit a lot of these design choices, but you want to stay close to the reference, but you also want to make sure you're capturing something that will work in 3D from every conceivable angle. Play with these cheeks a little bit. Ultimately going to be mostly fur. There's a certain these eyes are going to be a lot more inset than this. I think that's one of the things that I always seem to forget. Every time you're starting out with characters, they look weird, super weird, until you hit those correct plane breaks and shapes in all views. It's just going to look crazy for a long time before it starts to look correct. At least for the way I go about it. Some guys will take a piece and start pushing and pulling until they immediately, sort of at the very beginning, end up with the exact shape they're looking for. There's an approach I can take where her face is going to be super flat, or this moundy result where cheeks are there's a plane break, a very visible plane break from the cheeks to eyes. The flat face looks really, really cool in 2D, or when you're doing 3D, that is going to almost be mimicking 2D, so you're not even making realistic eyes. You're almost, it's like pasting eye design on top of the flat face. It looks really nice. And when you start pushing 3D forms and start hinting at more anatomically correct shapes, then that sort of falls apart. So there might have to be a lot of like designing of this eye area that looks slightly different from the reference. For me, I'm going with I want to make some really nice realistic looking eyes, almond shaped eyes, and I want everything around it to aid it, right? Yeah. And I realized that the more fluffier her cheeks look really childlike, and I'm not going for that look. I want like more edgier character. So I gotta be careful to make sure these cheeks don't end up just looking all fluffy. You want a little bit of, how do you say, androgyny, or like androgynous type features, like sharp jawline type stuff, to help her look a little bit more edgier and not like some fluffy toy, cartoonish toy. Yeah. So that's all challenge that's coming further down the line, and a little bit of it will start being resolved now. Fairly good starting point. Let me select the ground, and once again inspect this silhouette. Yeah, she looks really nice. Very nice silhouette so far. Like the back too. Yeah, hers turned out a lot better. The hair is also working, but even the hair, I feel like, yeah, I'm really gonna have to do that extra one that comes over here. It feels like it'll complete this better, because it just really feels like it'll help complete it, although there's not enough space in the headband to accommodate it. So might be the first small one I was talking about. Yeah, I'm definitely gonna have to put in some smaller ones. Maybe not. Let's see how this first small one contributes. Maybe it's not smaller, but shorter. Maybe the differential between each and every one of them won't look good if they're that varied, but definitely height. A variance in height is going to add value. Yeah, I might leave all the secondary and tertiary shapes of these dreads to the X-Gen system. They'll come in the way of fur and like really frizz and a little bit of all the surface detail that you expect to see on dreads, and just leave the shaping, the main shapes, to ZBrush and polygons. So this one I mentioned before is going to be the toughest part of this character. Doing dreads is nothing easy, whether you're using a fur system or not. Okay. This is all ZBrush work is about. It's just tumbling and fixing shapes in every conceivable angle. It's the only thing that makes things look professional. As you're doing a turntable of them, people are looking, and there doesn't seem to be any bad shapes, any bad design choices. So all the way up to the end, that's what it's going to be. To represent gravity well, and you have to pick some really nice swooping shapes, nice forceful line, nice offsetting of crescent shapes and stuff. That's a sculptor's work, in my opinion. To close out this lesson, I'm going to start cleaning up the hands or the arms a little bit. This cylinder and sphere is just not going to work. So I'm going to start with him. I'm going to start with the deltoid mass. I'm going to shape it into something that's more reminiscent of a deltoid. Not that much. Won't be that swollen. I just said I don't want to overload these characters with, they're not going to have that much granular detail. It's all secondary forms, so a lot of this will be smoothed very nicely. I'll fix this transition so that it's the deltoid and the chest blend properly. There's supposed to be like this relationship between the two where the chest is more in like this. So this is a good enough deltoid. And then the other thing I'm going to, because his arms are raised, I do want to make sure that this deltoid is sort of angled up because of the position of his hands. And with him, I'm going to deal with the ridge group. I'm going to append a sphere to create the ridge group that is connected to, get a really strong brush. So it's connected to the humerus around here. It travels up. Just something that hints at it. And then connects under the thumb, around the thumb area. And just swelling here. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to combine it with the extensors. Yeah, I'm going to combine the whole mass with the extensor mass. So the extensors are what allow you to pull your fingers backwards, and it connects on the back here. Before I'm able to pinpoint the location of that, so this connects here. I'm going to put in the elbow, or what is called the olecranon, or the head of the ulna, I think is what it is, but it's just basically the bone that we call our elbow. So I'm going to use a cube for that. And because the hand is supinated, and the ulna is parallel with the radius, the ulna is on the lower half of the arm. So that olecranon is supposed to be on this lower half here. This is all important to know when you start trying to play with these poses. You need to understand anatomy and motion. So this elbow thing here is on the lower half of the arm. Maybe you look at it from the back, like that. I scaled it up a bit, and that should suffice. And it really, it travels all the way down. This elbow here travels all the way down to connect with this. I think it's called the styloid process. So because of the way the hand is positioned, I'm going to rotate it correctly so that it's doing the right thing, because it's going to travel all the way down like this, all the way down here. Okay. And I'm going to fill in the ridge group here to touch it. And also I'm going to let it taper, because that's also a common shape for it, like taper like this. And make sure that it's rotated the correct way, like that. Yeah, actually I might have messed up the rotation of it. It's going to be a lot more rotated down like this and a lot lower to be able to travel all the way there. Okay. Make sure that his hand feels correct. Okay, so that should be enough. I don't think there's anything else. I just kind of want to do the bicep too. Yeah, I should have just let this be the... Let me move this ridge group. I think I've undershot its how far it travels. Yeah. I don't care too much about too much divvying. I just want the prominent ones like this one and the bicep for him. I want them to kind of to bulge just a little bit, and also the triceps. You gotta do that. So I feel like for the biceps, I'm just going to adjust this a little bit. I'm just going to adjust this cylinder a little bit and just allow it to overtake this shape so that it merges. This is really supposed to be an elbow, but now that it's just a placeholder really. So this is kind of like shaping wand with this huge flexor mass and this bicep marry like this, and then the ridge group comes over it like that. Okay, so something like that. Okay, and that's enough for a bicep. All right, and so we have our olecranon on our elbow. I'll figure out a way to blend it into that. I have this little hook which I'll design, and I think that this should be fine. I'll blend it in. This is like your flexor mass. I can cover it. Make it cover that. That's cool. So something like that. All right, so that's a good arm. And then the tricep, the 3 heads of the tricep. Let me think about a good shape I could use. Probably also a sphere. I'll just use a sphere. Because I don't want this too much definition. With her, I'm not going to emphasize these muscles too much at all. So it's going to be really only the bulge of a little bit of the bulge of the bicep, but more so the ridge group. Her ridge group does have to be prominent. I think this is enough. It's not really shaped like this, but I'll do the minor shaping of it into a final tricep-like feel later, but it usually kind of streams down here. There's a long head of it, I think, here, and a medial head, and let me just hint that the direction it's going to travel in. It sits over here, and there's sort of like a muscle over here called a brachii or something, but they're going to all be a group. They're going to be all smoothed out. This whole thing is going to count on fur, as I've said several times. And this, let me make sure it's tucked into the deltoid. This deltoid mass, it's going to be sitting up top. So something like that. This is the starting point, and it's going to actually be, let me make sure I have it going to the right insertion point there. Okay, so yeah, there's plenty of muscles there, but these are the only ones I care about for this. All right, so that's a good arm definition for him. Let me activate symmetry, mirror and weld, and then the tricep, activate symmetry, mirror and weld, and the olecranon on the elbow, activate symmetry, mirror and weld. So those are his arms, the block out of his arms, and he's ready to be merged and really detailed piece by piece. Let me start with her olecranon or her elbow. So I'm going to append, I'll take a cube and move it. And again, because her hand is supinated, it's on the lower half of the arm, right? But because it's supinated, it's rotated downward. So the elbow's pointing down to the floor a little bit. So I'm going to go like this and make sure that gotta make it small enough. Make sure it's low on the lower half, because the ulna will be here, radius is on top, and then it's pointed down a little bit like this. And let me scale it up. Scale it in. And maybe just run a deformation smooth. Just smooth it out a little bit. Okay. So that's your elbow. I'm going to make sure I move it into position. And just a little bit higher. And so now I'm going to append a sphere so we can do the ridge group mixed with the extensors. So I'm going to grab my brush fairly strong so I can move it around. This is one muscle that, this one muscle group that you don't want to, I really wanted to show. Like, it might be significantly underemphasized later, but it has to at least be there in some capacity, or else the hands will look really weird. I don't want too much of a huge bicep bulge. And this thing extends to the humerus, so it really is all the way up here to the humerus. Right up there. And just I'm going to simplify this mesh with Dynamesh. I should have done that with him too. Do some smoothing to make it smaller. And I've connected it to the wrong place. It's supposed to be connected to the base of the thumb. And so it'll be bleeding into front part, what we have established as our front. And I'm going to get rid of this. I'm going to emphasize, I'm going to extend what should be this bicep and this dip of the bicep, and push back this sphere. It just really has no value here. It's just there, confusing shape. That's not how the arm is shaped and is designed. And I just want to make sure that this, which represents the flexor mass, is housing the bicep. Okay, so this bicep here is being housed. Right. I expect too much of a bulge from her, or maybe she might end up looking good with some significantly more muscular arms, but I'll determine that when we get to that stage. And then here, like I did with him, I'm going to taper this because it really does have that sort of a shape. And make sure that the ridge group is somewhat flush with it. And then this sphere, once again, is going to be pushed in, because it just really doesn't mean anything. And I'll make sure that the flexor mass takes over. Alright, so that's a better arm for her. Still a little bit aggressively muscular, so tone that down. Kind of looks good though. She's short and stubby and have ham-limbed feet, so it might end up looking good to have fairly large forearms to extend that ham-limbed look. Okay, so here. And I like what's happening at the top of the arm. I'm not going to put any, I don't think I should put a bicep mass there. It will help. Let me just put it there. So let me first deal with this deltoid mass. It's going to be like that, and then this will extend over here. I have our deltoid mass, and we have a little bit of a little sharp shape, and then start her off too muscular. I think I'm going to leave out the tricep. I'm just going to hint at it. I don't really need her triceps to be bulging out like that. Just hint at it and shape it. So no tricep for her. No tricep primitive for her. Shape it all after it's welded. And connect this a little. Make sure that this ridge group is doing what it's supposed to do in all views for now. And may or may not establish some plane breaks for her when I'm sculpting her. Okay, I think that's enough. I think this is kind of wrong. Middle. Get a little bit of a bigger bicep. Okay, that's pretty good. Okay, so that's her. I'm gonna mirror over the ridge group. I'm gonna mirror over the olecranon. And that's it for their blocking. In the next lesson, I'm going to start with the torso, legs, arms, and hands. The fingers will not be welded initially, neither will the head. The head will be left alone, everything will be left alone here. And then I'll focus on the hands, the torso, and the legs, including the feet and the toes. And I'll cut them into sections. and polish them first as a collective. Then I'll start connecting the fingers and polish them, and that should be the lesson for both of them. Getting the body welded and as close as possible to the final result.